Every alien in the arena had already refused. One by one, champions from 6 different worlds stepped up to the combat platform, looked into the pit below, and walked away without a word. Nobody knew why. Nobody dared ask. But a human girl was about to find out. The Varith combat trials were not meant for outsiders. They were ancient, older than most star charts, a proving ground built by warrior races to test what could not be tested with words. Strength, instinct, the will to survive when everything said you should not. Humanity had only been part of the Galactic Assembly for 6 years. 6 years of being called soft, fragile, a species that needed machines to do their fighting for them. Nobody expected a human to even sign up. Her name was Mira Chun, and she was 23 years old. She stood at the edge of the registration line wearing an oversized jacket 3 sizes too big, hood pulled low, saying nothing to anyone. The other soldiers laughed when they saw her. A Draxel warrior, nearly 9 feet of muscle and horn, sneered down at her. "This one thinks she belongs here?" Mira did not answer. She just filled out the form. But what none of them knew was that Mira had a reason for being there. One that had nothing to do with glory, and everything to do with someone she had lost. The combat pit itself was the real test. Not the fighting. The pit. Every year, a creature was released into the arena floor. Something old. Something the assembly refused to name in official records. And every year, before the fighting even began, competitors were required to walk to the edge and look down. If you turned away, you were out. No shame in it. Most did. This year, 5 champions had already walked to that edge. 5 champions had already turned back, pale, shaking, refusing to say what they saw. The crowd had gone quiet, uneasy, because nobody in Varith history had ever seen this many refusals in one trial. Something was different this year. Something was wrong. And nobody knew what it was, until Mira-chan stepped forward. She walked to the edge slowly, hood still up, hands still in her pockets. The assembly officiator, an old Threll diplomat with silver scales, tried to stop her. "Human, you do not have to do this." 5 trained warriors already withdrew. Mira did not look at him. "I know. Then why continue?" She finally lifted her head, and for the first time, the crowd saw her eyes. They were not afraid. She looked down into the pit. The arena went dead silent, every species leaning forward, waiting to watch the human break like the others had. Seconds passed. 10, 20, 30. She did not flinch. She did not step back. She did not even blink. And then she asked something nobody expected. "Is this all it does? Just sit there?" The officiator's scales actually paled, because what was in that pit was not just a monster. It was a Kravox, a creature bred specifically to mirror the deepest fear of whoever looked at it. An ancient bio-weapon banned everywhere except this trial, kept for exactly one purpose, to break the strongest warriors before the fight even began. It showed each champion their worst nightmare. And Mira-chun had looked directly into it, and felt nothing. Whispers spread through the stands like wildfire. What did she see? Why isn't she scared? What kind of nightmare doesn't scare a human? Nobody knew the answer yet, but they were about to, because the trial coordinator, humiliated that a human had passed where 5 champions failed, decided to change the rules. "If the human truly feels no fear," he announced to the crowd, "then she will not need her uniform advantage." The crowd murmured in confusion. He was talking about her jacket. Every competitor wore standard combat gear, reinforced, padded, protective. Myra's jacket looked nothing like that. It looked civilian, old, worn at the sleeves. The coordinator smiled cruelly. "Human, remove the jacket. Fight as you are or forfeit." This was meant to humiliate her, to expose her as untrained, unprepared, a fraud pretending to belong among warriors. The crowd waited for her to refuse. Mira reached up and slowly, deliberately pulled back her hood. Then she unzipped the jacket, and the entire arena stopped breathing, because underneath that oversized, unremarkable jacket was not soft human skin. It was scar tissue, dozens of them, layered across her arms and shoulders, the kind of scars that only came from surviving things that should have killed her. Old burns. claw marks, a puckered line across her collarbone that looked exactly like a Draxel blade wound. The same Draxel warrior who had laughed at her earlier went completely silent, because he recognized that wound. He had given a wound just like it 3 years ago, on a mining colony that humanity was never supposed to survive, an attack that assembly records listed as total colonial loss. Mira had been there. She had survived it. And the thing that had truly refused to leave her, the nightmare she had faced in that pit and felt nothing from, was not the Kravox creature at all. It was a memory, because the Kravox did not create fear. It reflected it. And when Mira looked into the pit, she did not see a monster. She saw that day again, the fire, the screaming, the moment she had to choose between saving her little brother or saving herself, and she had already survived the worst thing her mind could ever produce. There was nothing left in that pit that could scare her more than her own memories. The crowd did not laugh anymore. The Draxel warrior who had mocked her stepped forward, horns lowered, not in challenge this time, but in something closer to respect. You were at Kesset Colony. Myra's voice was quiet. I was the only one who was. Silence swallowed the arena, because everyone present, every species, every soldier suddenly understood what they were looking at. Not a fragile human pretending to be strong. A survivor who had already lived through the worst thing the galaxy could offer, and walked out the other side. The trial coordinator, realizing his mistake, tried to backpedal. The trial will still proceed as scheduled. No. The Threll officiator interrupted, his voice suddenly firm. It will not. He turned to the crowd, scales flushing gold, the Threll signal of solemn respect. This trial exists to find warriors who have already faced true fear and survived it. We do not need to test what already answered that question years ago. He turned back to Mira. Combatant Chun, you are not required to fight today. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd again. But this time they were different. This time they were awed. Because the Verith trials had one final rule, one so old that most modern species had forgotten it existed. If a warrior proved beyond doubt that they had already survived true fear, the trial could grant something rarer than a combat victory. Recognition, not as a competitor, as a Verith kindred, an honor given only a handful of times in the last 1,000 years, to beings whose courage needed no further proof. The Draxel warrior who once mocked her was the first to kneel. Then the Threll officiator knelt beside him. Then, one by one, every remaining champion in the arena knelt as well, species who had spent decades believing humans were the weakest link in the assembly, now bowing before one human girl in a worn-out jacket. Mira stood there, stunned, scars visible under the arena lights, and for the first time since Kesset Colony, she let herself cry in front of strangers, because for 3 years she had carried that day alone. Nobody in the assembly had understood what she survived. Nobody had known the weight she carried under that oversized jacket. Until now, the Draxel warrior, whose name was Kal Voss, rose and placed a clawed hand gently on her shoulder. I am sorry I mocked you. Mira wiped her eyes. You didn't know. No, Kal said quietly. But I know now, and I will not forget it again. There was a warmth in his voice that surprised her. Something that had not been there before. Respect turning slowly into something gentler. Something neither of them expected from a battlefield. The crowd, watching this unfold, erupted into applause unlike anything the arena had heard before. Not for a victory in combat, but for a victory of survival. News of what happened at the Verith trials spread across a dozen star systems within hours. Headlines called her the human who refused to break. Other species began requesting to meet her, study her file, understand how a species so young to the galaxy could produce warriors capable of standing where ancient champions could not. But Mira did not care about headlines. She cared about one thing only, that somewhere far away, wherever her brother's spirit rested, he would know she had survived, and that she had finally stopped hiding the scars that proved it. Kal Voss found her later that night, sitting alone near the edge of the arena, staring up at unfamiliar stars. He sat beside her without asking permission, which for a Draxel warrior, was already a rare form of respect. You could have told them your reason, he said. Why you entered the trial? Mira shook her head. It wasn't about the trial. I needed to know if I could still stand there and look at something that used to break me, without breaking again. Call was quiet for a moment. And did you? She almost smiled. I stood there. I looked. And it didn't win. Call nodded slowly, something unreadable passing behind his eyes. Then you have already won something greater than any trial could offer. For the first time in 3 years, Mira Chen did not feel like a fragile human trying to prove she belonged. She felt like exactly what she was. Someone who had survived the unsurvivable, and was finally ready to let someone else see the scars underneath the jacket. And somewhere in the stars above them, the assembly was already whispering a new question, one that would follow humanity into every trial from that day forward. If one human girl could face true fear and refuse to break, what happened when the rest of humanity finally did the same?